Let's talk about how to tune when we don't have a tuner handy. You can tune the guitar to itself. What I'm going to show you now is not the most efficient way to do it, but it is a way to tune the guitar. Remember, on the E string, the low E string, the notes are open E, first fret's F, second fret's F sharp or G flat, third fret is G, the fourth fret is G sharp or A flat, the fifth fret is the note A, right? Now, it just so happens that that A on the fifth fret is exactly the same pitch as open A. And if you listen to that, it sounds like exactly the same pitch. Play the one note, the fifth fret of the low E string, and make sure it matches the A string. Now, I'm going to detune my A string so you see what I'm talking about. If you play the fifth fret of the E string, can you hear the whoa, 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 whoa? Because the A string is out of tune. So you can do this. Take your finger off, tune it up a little bit. Oh, it's still off. That's still off. Oh, that sounds pretty good. Therefore, it's in tune. It's not the most efficient way, but it'll work. You can do the same thing with the other frets too. The fifth fret of the A string, you got open A, first fret is A sharp or B flat, second fret's B, Brad and Chad, third fret is Chad or C, fourth fret is C sharp or D flat, and then the fifth fret is the note D. So the fifth fret of the low E string matches the A string, fifth fret of the A string matches the open D string, fifth fret of the D string matches the open G string. But watch this, the fifth fret of the G string does not match the open B string. The guitar is tuned, meaning the names of the strings are such that that B string breaks the pattern. If you did your open G string notes, you're going to go open G. First fret's going to be G sharp or A flat. Second fret's A. Third fret is A sharp or B flat. Fourth fret is a B, which is, of course, the name of the next string. So if you go to your fifth fret, for some reason, it's actually one fret further than the open string that is the B string. The good news is that's the only exception. On the B string, first fret is B, C, C sharp, D flat, D, D sharp, E flat, and then the fifth fret is E, which matches the high E string. Now here's why that's not the most efficient way to tune. When we get into soloing and making the wow, wow, wow noises, we're going to talk about bending strings. To bend a string, the strings are all parallel to each other. To bend a string is plain and simple, to move it out of the parallel state. So like here's the fifth fret of the low E string, and I'm going to move it out of parallel, or bend the string. Did you hear that? So you can bend the string and make it go higher in pitch. So sometimes when people do the fifth fret technique of tuning, they will sometimes accidentally bend the string. You have to be very sure to not bend that string at all. You remember what an octave is. An octave is when the sound wave goes twice as fast or twice as slowly as the last note. So here's open A, which is going 110 times a second. Here's 12th fret of the A string, which is going 220. And then we chop the octave up into slices. Well, if for some reason the neck is slightly out of place of the guitar, those frets won't line up in just the right place. And it will sound out of tune. Even though the open string may be in tune, when you actually push down on things and you start getting the frets to activate, they're not in the right place, so it'll sound kind of out of tune. The good news is most of the time that's an adjustable thing down here on these little saddles. You can move them one way or the other if you have an electric guitar. We don't want to change the frets, rip them out of the wood. Instead of changing where they live, you can change where the halfway point or the octave point lives by adjusting these. I wouldn't try to do it yourself. I would take it into a trained repair person to get them to do it. But if your intonation's out, you may be like, well, here's my fifth fret, poink, and oh no, that doesn't sound right, because your intonation's off. So if all you have is this ability to go fifth fret to open, fifth fret to open, fifth fret to open, great, do it. But if you can use a tuner, that'll be a way better start. One further little tip about it is part of the problem is doing this, and then you have to take off your left hand to adjust. So if you're going to do it, if you just can't do anything else, I usually recommend this. Finger the note like this, and then there's the open string, and then reach over with this hand to make the adjustment. Because then you can hear if the note's in or out of tune. That sounds good. Let's talk about string vibration, how they move. Most of us don't spend a lot of time thinking about how strings go back and forth when they vibrate. If we were to, maybe we think of it kind of like a jump rope on the school ground where there's the two kids. It's actually more accurate to think of it more like let's say that your uncle in a hammock. Back and forth, dee, 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 dee. And that's how most of us think of the string vibrating. Now, that's a good image, but it's not complete, because if the person in the hammock were to vibrate like a string vibrates, yes, it would be going back and forth like this, right? But at the same time, the person's torso would be doing this opposite from the lower body, like this. So they'd be crossing over like this. So as the string moves back and forth, it does this. And then there's a dead spot in the middle, which is called a nodal point. And that spot is actually what we access on the guitar when we play harmonics. So if you look at the guitar, here's the one end on the nut, here's the saddle on the other end. Right about halfway where that double dot is the nodal point in the person on the hammock's torso. So here on up is a vibration. From there to that side is the other vibration. And I'm just lightly taking my pointer finger and laying it right on that 12th fret. Now here's the actual fretted note. I don't know if you can hear the tonal difference. And here is the harmonic. It's the one place on the guitar, by the way, that the harmonic and the fretted note are identical. And that's true on every string. Harmonics are very kind of more chimey sounding than fretted notes. Now the fascinating thing to me is that if we're staying with that metaphor of the person on the hammock, yeah, so now they're subdivided in the middle, but they'd also be subdivided along in thirds. Watch. I just tried to get a bunch of harmonics off of my guitar. Some of them you can hear easily, some of them not so much. If you're playing an electric guitar, you should probably make sure that you're using this pickup, the pickup that's closest to the bridge and the saddles. So I'm going to take this knob here, this lever, and move it all the way down. Now watch how much better the harmonics sound. The easiest ones to get are on the 12th fret, the 5th fret, and the 7th fret. The 4th and the 9th fret are identical harmonics, by the way. But they're a little teeny bit harder to get. And again, to access a harmonic, you just lightly take your pointer finger, or whatever finger you want, place it on the nodal point, which is usually over the fret. Just a little teeny bit. I always say to imagine the last 5 molecules of your finger, like the atoms, making contact with the first 5 molecules of the string. Super light. So that's how you get harmonics in the first place. Now, how are we going to use harmonics to tune? Well, there's the question. I mean, it's a cool effect if you just want to use them. There's some wonderful guitarists who use harmonics as kind of their palette from which they compose nice tonal kind of stuff to contribute to songs. But let's talk about how to use them in a more practical sense, which is to tune. To tune using harmonics, all you have to do is get one string in tune, and then the rest should flow fairly easily. The string I always suggest starting with is the G string, and not just because it's underwear. It is because the G string is a nice higher note, and it's easier to hear. You can match it with either the G above middle C on a piano. For example, if you have a piano around your house or a keyboard, play the G above middle C on the piano, ploing, and then you play your open G string, and you should be able to hear whether one is higher or lower than the other one and match that G string to it. Then once that's in tune, you can get all the rest of the strings in tune with that G string. Let me show you how. So let's just assume that my G string is now in tune. I'm going to come over here and my guitar is in tune. I'm going to detune some of these strings on purpose so we can show you how to do this. I just randomly moved them one way or the other. So here's my G string. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play the harmonic that lives on the 7th fret of the G string. Sounds like that. Now the cool thing is, the 5th fret of the D string, those two notes should be identical. And it's a lot easier to hear. If you can hear that. So I'm going to raise my D string. If you can hear that. As I'm raising the D string, and then it stops, right? Now it's in tune. Now if I kept going, the further I go, it starts speeding up again. So now my D string matches the G string, which matched the piano. Now I can do the same. The 7th fret of the D string should be the same as the 5th fret of the A string. I'm going to adjust my A string until they match. Ta-da! I like to give it one more hit after I just make sure it's still in tune. Now I'm going to do the same thing. The 5th fret of the E string should match the 7th fret of the A string. And now it's in tune. I'm glad I did it one more time because it wasn't quite. I think I went a little too far, so. That sounds good. That's slow enough to where it's pretty close. Now, so that's pretty easy on those 4 strings. Now, the last 2 strings are a little controversial. Some people, we can't, first of all, do this, the 7th fret, 5th fret thing, on the G string and B string because they're not the same note. That B string's pretty wacky. They're just different notes, so it doesn't work. So what I like to do is I play the 7th fret of my low E string, and the pitch of the open B string should match that note. If they don't match, you should hear it. So adjust the B string until they match. There you go. Now, some people will do the 7th fret of the high E and the B string. To me, that's a hard harmonic to try to hit and actually do it accurately. So I just do the same that we just did with the open B string. I play the 7th fret of my A string, and then adjust my high E string to match it. Now I'm going to try like an open G chord and see if it matches. That sounds pretty good to me. Now it's still way more accurate to actually use a tuner. But if you don't have a tuner around, or if you just want to go old school and not use electronics, there's a good way to do it. Tuning with harmonics is an efficient, accurate way to tune. Okay, let's sum up about how to use harmonics to help you get in tune. The trick is getting one of your strings in tune. I prefer using the G string as the starting string. So make sure your G string is adjusted properly. Now, once it is, we're going to use that G string to tune the other strings. The 5th fret harmonic on the D string should be the same pitch as the 7th fret harmonic on the G string. So I'm going to plug the G string first, then the D string. Clearly the one is out, so I'm going to adjust the D string until the beats go away, and then it's in tune. Now, we're just going to keep doing that same thing coming up towards our face. The 7th fret harmonic on the D string should be the pitch of the 5th fret harmonic on the A string. You'll notice I kind of refresh the notes. Now, 7th fret of the A string should be the same as the 5th fret of the E string. Lastly, there are the last 2 strings, the highest 2 strings to contend with. We're going to have the 7th fret of the B string give us the pitch reference for the B string. you go. And then the 7th fret of the A string will give us the note that the high E string should match. And there we go. Now if I play a G chord, we should be able to hear that it's in tune. One quick word about it, tuning with an electric guitar. Some electric guitars are equipped with what's called a tremolo bar. Now this guitar isn't a tremolo bar, or whammy bar is what most of us call it. Those kind of guitars tend to need to be retuned once you tune them, because there are a series of springs in the back, and as you adjust the strings by tuning them, it actually releases tension on the springs, in the back of the guitar. It kind of stretches, and they'll need a slight refining of the tuning that you did. So if it's a little out of tune, when you get done, it's like, ding, okay, I should be all the way good. Oh no, don't be surprised. That's just an effect of the springs in the system that's used by the tremolo bar or whammy bar.